Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 38 of the Stitching Between Pages podcast. I'm Robin. You can find me on Ravelry as halfpast92, on Instagram as medievalisting, and you can find show notes for previous episodes and maybe this episode, not sure yet, at stitchingbetweenpages.blogspot.com. If I decide not to do show notes, there will definitely be a post for this podcast episode in the Ravelry group for the sadly very inactive Ravelry group for this podcast, which is Stitching Between Pages. You can find it on Ravelry under the groups tab. And even if there aren't show notes, there will be a post in the Ravelry group. So if you have questions about anything that I talked about, you can feel free to ask them there, and I will try to answer them in as timely a fashion as I can. So today is the 8th of September, 2017. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to post this episode, just upload it, because there's clearly no longer a regular podcasting schedule over here, or if I'm going to wait until Sunday, which has historically been my uploading day. So we'll see. The last time I recorded an episode, episode 37, was almost exactly 9 months ago. It was on the 7th of January. It is 2017. Can't remember if I said that. Like I said, I'm like super out of practice, and I feel like I'm rushing because I'm kind of nervous about this. But I've been thinking about it for a little while, and I decided that I have plenty of knitting. I have some new yarn to show you. I have a couple of books that I'm really excited to talk about, and I have some work that I would really like to avoid doing. So all of this is combining to mean that I decided to film a podcast. I hope the weather where you are, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, is as autumnal as the weather here in Chicago. If you follow me on Instagram, you might know that I was out of the country for about 7 weeks this summer. It was partially a research trip. I'm a graduate student, and partially a trip to visit some friends in the UK whom I have not seen or had not seen in 3 or 4 years. So I'm not going to talk too much about that trip. I'll talk about it a little bit when I talk about acquisitions, because all of my yarn acquisitions are from exciting foreign locales. But anyways, I got back to the States at the very end of August, and I got back to Chicago about a week and a half ago. And since I got back, the weather has been it's like early fall. It feels exactly like the temperatures are perfect. Today is super gray. The weather forecast says it's not going to rain, but I'm kind of like, oh, are you sure? It really looks like it could rain. Anyways, I am loving the early fall weather. So I hope that wherever you are, it is like that too. This is one of my favorite times of the year. And here is Miss Holly. She agrees. She thinks that early fall is a great time of year. So the beloved podcast cat. So without any further ado, let's talk about some knitting, because that's hopefully what you're here for, since this is or has historically been a knitting podcast. I have something in my eye. I don't know where the cat is going, and as usual, there will be no editing, because it's not how I roll here. So while I was traveling, I knitted, and please forgive me if I keep looking down. It's because I wrote show notes, because it's been so long since I've done this that I knew that if I didn't write it down, I would just forget everything that I was supposed to tell you about everything. So while I was traveling, this is huge. There is no way you're going to be able to see all of it in one shot. It's massive. I blocked it yesterday, so it's been off the needles for ages. This is, you may recognize, the Across the Pond shawl, which is designed by Mina Phillip of the Knitting Expat podcast. And while I was traveling across the pond, I thought that this would be a great pattern to knit. I was hoping that since it is a 2-skein shawl, and I did use almost all of both skeins. I have a little bit of each color left. But not a ton. I pretty much used as much as I couldn't get I used as much as I made the shawl as big as I could. There we go. Got there in the end. So I figured that since it was a 2-skein project, and I'd kind of been a slow knitter of late, I've had this like ongoing sort of on and off knitting slump. I figured that 2 skeins would be enough to keep me busy, and then, well, if I finished it, I'd just have to go yarn shopping. And so, of course, I did actually finish it while I was across the pond. I finished it while I was in England, visiting some friends, and I really love it. I blocked it, like I said, I blocked it yesterday. It's been finished for a long time, but I just didn't obviously block it while I was traveling, and then sort of got home and was busy with other things. And then when I decided yesterday that I was going to film a podcast episode today, I thought that you would much rather see the fully finished object than, you know, sort of the sad, you know how lace looks before you block it. It doesn't look like it's supposed to at all. It looks kind of sad and crumpled, and, you know, the shawl was maybe half this size. So I gave it a nice bath and blocked it on my floor, and because it's so light and airy, it dried super quickly, and here we are. So I knit it out of Tosh Merino Light, 2 skeins that I bought at the DFW Fiber Fest way back in April of 2016. It's crazy to think that it has been so long since that wonderful weekend. I had such a great time meeting some knitting friends, and I bought lots of yarn. This might actually be the first of the yarn that I bought that I've actually used, so that's exciting. I like things to sort of hang out for a while and marinate. Although I have one work in progress to show you where the yarn did not marinate in my stash at all. Anyways, I cannot find the tags for either of these colors. Oh, the light is really strange today. I have 2 lamps beside, I have my desk lamp, and then there's a floor lamp over here that are both on. But the light outside is really strange. So these colors, it's more of a sort of a corally orange than like the bright yellow orange that's showing up. But these colors are meant to go together. The speckles in this color are the same as this color. I think one of them had something about clay in the title or the colorway name. But with traveling, I think things just sort of disappeared, which is a shame because I did not make a note. But anyways, it was so much fun to knit. It was a really, really great pattern. And it had been so long since I knit a shawl. But when I was packing for my trip, I just sort of decided, you know what? Going to knit a shawl. I feel like knitting a shawl. So I did. And so the part that's speckled has this really pretty sort of, it's a slip stitch and kind of gathered texture with some, instead of slipping the stitch with the yarn in the back, you slip it with the yarn in front, and it's really clever. I don't want to give it away, obviously, because it's a paid for pattern, but it's super pretty. It makes kind of this like diamond texture, I guess, all over the body of the shawl. And then it lines up perfectly with this really beautiful lace. I had so much fun. I did not want this lace to end. It's so perfect. I love a really small lace motif like that. I think it's over, 8 stitches or so. And then, of course, the picot bind off, which it takes a while, but it is so worth it. I love the effect, and it's just perfect with the way that it lines up with the lace that lines up. I don't know. This whole shawl pattern was just a real joy to knit, and I am super excited to wear this. I almost wore it today, but I thought the orange and the purple were a little bit too clashy, and I'm not really sure. I'm going out later, and I'm not sure if I'm going to keep the shawl on. This is the first time I have worn a shawl since spring, since the weather changed. So again, this is the Across the Pond shawl designed by Nina Phillip, and it was a really, really wonderful knit. So that's my only finished object that I'm going to show. I sort of toyed with the idea of trying to show more, and I have finished a couple of other things. I finished a couple of sweaters. You can look on Instagram if you would like to see those. But I decided to sort of only talk about recent things, just both for the sake of time and also just for the sake of kind of, I feel like I can talk better about more recent things that I have worked on. So in that case, we are going to turn to works in progress. And the first one that I'm going to show you is, I'm actually not sure why it's still a work in progress. I really just need to sort of sit down and finish it. But I'm going to show it to you as a work in progress. And this is the Greystone Hat. Again, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll have seen this. I posted it, I think, on Sunday. Today is Friday. I started this hat on Saturday. Like I said, there's no reason that I really should be finished. But maybe it's just I have enjoyed knitting it so much that I just don't want it to be over. I might have to knit another one, actually. This one is a gift, not for a person who watches the podcast, so I can share it with you. But I might have to knit another one for myself because I've really, really enjoyed knitting this hat. So here it is. There are sort of two options. There's a beanie and a slouch option. And I am knitting the slouch option, but I am going to give it to the recipient with the brim cuffed. So, because I like a good cuffed hat. I like, it keeps your ears warm in the Chicago wintry winds. Anyways, did I say this is the Greystone Hat by Melissa Thompson of Sweet Fiber Yarns. And yeah, it's a cabled hat with kind of a textured rib pattern. And it starts from kind of a textured rib that sort of like bleeds nicely into the cable. And the cable pattern is super, super simple. But I really think the result is really nice. So I am knitting this in just some knit picks. This is Wool of the Andes worsted superwash. Again, it's a gift, and I wanted something that was super easy to care for. And knit pick superwash fits the bill. This is the Noble Heather colorway. It's a really pretty green. And as usual, the camera does not want to focus on it when it is close. No. Yes, there we go. Success. So it's a really beautiful heathered green. I really like sort of the depth that heathered colors have that solid colors just sometimes don't. So anyways, I'm almost done. I forget if I have to count the cable repeats. I forget if I have one more before I start the crown decreases or if if it is time to start the crown decreases now. And this is, another evening of knitting. I've been watching The West Wing. I started watching it ages ago, and I'm finally on the last season. So I'm determined to finish my watching of The West Wing before the new academic year starts, which is very soon, which is crazy. So, another episode or two of West Wing, and I will be done with this hat, which is great because I would like to give it to the recipient before it gets cold, so they are prepared with the hat. I am knitting this on US 7. Are these carbons? Who knows? Mystery. I'm pretty sure they are. And you will all be looking at the needles and screaming at me what they are. Clearly, I'm just so out of practice. I'm like 99% sure that these are Knitter's Pride carbons. US 7, 4.5 millimeters. I think the pattern calls for a 6 for the ribbing, and I think I used a 5 because I could not find my US 6 16-inch circular needle. So I just kind of went with what I had handy. I will say the one thing about the pattern that is a little bit frustrating to me is that, like I said, there's two options. There's a beanie option and a slouch option, which is basically just knitting more or fewer repeats of the cable pattern. And I'm not totally certain why there's not like an adult small, an adult medium, and an adult large, or even just a like small, medium, medium large, because that would be a really easy thing to add, since the hat is just, it's, you know, it's a cable repeat. Like there's, you know, the motif sort of repeats all the way around. And I know that you could change, if you changed your needle size, that would change the gauge, and then that would obviously change the size of the hat. But I feel like for a hat pattern, like there should be at least 2 sizes, especially in a paid for pattern. And maybe that's a super nitpicky, really small thing. And I know as knitters, we're used to sort of adapting to the pattern, or adapting the pattern as we need, you know, to sort of meet our needs. You know, almost nobody knits a pattern exactly as it's written the whole way through, you know, every time. Like certainly you do that sometimes, but you know, we all make little modifications as we go. So it's a relatively easy thing to change the size of the hat, but I just can't help but feel like, especially this pattern is listed on Ravelry as a unisex design, you know, suitable for men and women, and I absolutely agree. I think a sort of classic cable pattern like this is perfect for just about anybody. And so in that sense, it's like, it's especially frustrating that there's not, I don't know. And maybe I am not a designer. I have never designed a pattern or sold a pattern on Ravelry. So maybe it is more difficult than I'm imagining. And so if you are a designer and it really is more difficult to adjust the, to sort of indicate several different hat sizes in a pattern, please feel free to let me know, because that would be useful information. And it's definitely, I like I said, I love this hat pattern. I would like to knit another one for myself. So it's not a, you know, a super harsh critique, or it's not intended that way at all. It's just sort of a, just a wondering, you know, why isn't there another, why aren't there more sizing options for this hat? But anyways, yes, Greystone Hat pattern by Melissa Thompson. And maybe I will finish that this evening. That would be fun. Let's see here. I have 2 more things to talk about. They are both sweaters, which is very exciting. I don't think I have ever had, nope, that's not true. I have had more than one sweater project in progress at one time. Earlier this year, I was working on both my featherweight cardigan and my lush cardigan, both of which are finished, both of which I'm very excited to pull out again with this cooler weather. So I'm going to show you the one that is on top. If you follow me on Instagram, again, you will have seen that I got a couple weeks ago. So when I got back to the States, I flew into Chicago and immediately flew up to visit my parents, who live in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, to spend a few days with them, to spend a few days up there. They had my cats all summer. My cat stayed with them. So I got to see them, and then my mom and I drove back with my cats to my home. We went to IKEA because I don't have a car in the city. I don't need one. And I frankly cannot afford one either. So it's a good thing I don't need one. Anyways, we went to IKEA, and many of you are probably familiar with, and I am going to butcher this, I do not speak Swedish at all. It's the Raskog cart, and if you are in Sweden or speak Swedish, please feel free to let me know how you actually pronounce the name of this little kitchen cart. I'm pretty sure it's marketed as a kitchen cart, but it has like three tiers. They're kind of open topped boxes, and it's on wheels, and it's super cute. And I know there are several or many of you out there who also use them as a craft cart. I've been thinking about and dreaming about and wanting this little cart for at least a year. I bought it. $25, came home, put it together that evening, and promptly filled it with crafting goodies. So it's sitting right here. I would tip the camera, but I don't think I'd get it set back up properly, so I'm not going to. But it's great. I love this little cart. I can sort of wheel it to wherever I'm. It's great. So I'm going to show you what's on top. This is the, oops, it's inside out, because I have to seam one side still. This is the Wolf River pullover. It is designed, I am going to butcher this. It is designed by Melissa Shashwari. I'm not going to try that again. Look up Wolf River on Ravelry. And it is a beautiful lace pullover, but it's knit in bulky Cascade ecological wool. So I have finished, hang on, I have finished the front and the back. I have attached them at the shoulders and I have seamed one side. I did actually mean to seam the other side before I filmed, and I just didn't. I forgot. So here we are. I am now remembering that I meant to do that. So here it is. Well, again, oh, it's big, and that means that I can't really show it very well. There we go. So the front and the back are knitted identically. And then you seam them together. I am not a very talented seamstress when it comes. I feel like I did an okay job, right? This is the one side that I have seamed. I think that's all right. Not too shabby. I feel like mattress stitch is one of those things that if I sat down with a video on YouTube or a tutorial and 2 pieces of knitted fabric that I didn't care about and like yarn to seam them together that was a different color than the yarn of the 2 swatches or whatever that I was seaming, I feel like I would get it and it would be, you know, whatever. That's just not something I've ever done. So I sort of fumble my way through mattress stitching things. Please tell me I'm not the only one. I feel like mattress stitch is one of those things that, like, as a knitter, you should just know how to do, right? And I just fumble my way through it. Who knows if what I'm doing is even related to mattress stitch. I am just drinking normal Twinings Earl Grey out of my lovely owl mug. It was so nice to get home. To all of my mugs. Ooh, nice lipstick print. When I was researching, I stayed in Airbnbs, and it was the first time that I'd used Airbnb. I had a great experience. I loved the apartments that I stayed in. They were perfect. I loved having a kitchen. It was really nice to sort of be staying not in a hotel, because I was this part of the trip was a month long, and living out of a hotel for a month would have been really iffy, I think. It meant that I could sort of cook dinner for myself and, you know, whatever. It was great. But the 3 different Airbnbs that I stayed in, the first one only had mugs that were like the size of bowls. They were huge. Like so big as to, like, I like a good sized mug. Like this is a good sized mug. It's larger than a standard sort of, I think, 12-ounce coffee mug. But when the mouth of the cup is so wide and there's so much surface area, your coffee or your tea cools down too quickly. You can't drink it that quickly. So I actually thought about buying a super cheap mug and just leaving it behind, you know, at the last Airbnb that I stayed at. And I wish I had, because the next 2 Airbnbs that I stayed at only had like tiny, I guess, espresso mugs, but it was like drinking out of a, you know, like little dollhouse cup. So it was really nice to get home to all of my my overlarge collection of mugs. For a single girl who lives alone, I own like 30 mugs. Maybe not that many, but more mugs than one person actually needs. How did I get on that tangent? I think I just picked up my cup of tea and took a sip, and then talked about mugs on my trip. So anyways, I started this ages ago, ages and ages and ages ago. I don't actually remember when. And I thought, this summer maybe. Spring, a while ago. Anyways, and I thought about taking it with me, but if you aren't familiar with ecological wool, it comes in giant hanks. It means that you only need, I'm knitting the smallest size, and I only needed two balls. This is literally almost the size of my head. I forget, hang on, I might have a tag here. It might be kind of organized. Here we go. This is the ball band for, as you can see, it is 100% undyed Peruvian Highland wool. It is color 8019, and I actually looked it up on the website, which is where I bought the yarn from. They call this color antique, which is a much better name than 8019. But anyways, as you can see, it is 250 grams, which is 478 yards. So it's a lot of yarn, which is great. It means that this is an incredibly affordable sweater. And I love this wool is really nice to knit with too. I would say it's not super soft, but it was softer than I was expecting. And I think that after, actually, that's a lie. I have blocked both these pieces and it did soften up a little bit. So, and obviously since it is a lacy pullover, I will be wearing some sort of garment underneath it, you know, a camisole or a t-shirt or whatever. So I really do not foresee a problem with softness. And that might be all I have to say. Oh, I was saying that I did not take this project with me on my trip because this is the yarn that I have remaining. And then this is not a small, you know, even folded up. It takes up a lot of room. It would have taken up a lot of room in my suitcase, which I just did not have that much room to spare because I was traveling for 7 weeks. And when I got to Paris, it was a heat wave. It was sort of over 90 degrees, which was it was around 33, 34 Celsius. And then in the UK, I visited a friend who lives on the Isle of Man, which has year-round sort of highs in, you know, between sort of like 50 and 65. So I was packing for lots of different weather, basically. So I did not, unfortunately, have room for my Wolf River. But I'm very excited about getting back to it. The next step, obviously, will be the sleeves. It does have long sleeves, which is good. I'm really excited about this as like a cozy pullover. And I think this is the first time that I have knit a pullover for myself. I think I've only ever knit myself cardigans. Yes, I have only ever knit myself. So this is the first pullover that I've knit for myself. And then you knit the neck, which is just ribbed. Pick up those stitches that are free. I'm not going to unfold it and show you. And then it will be done. So that's exciting. And hopefully, I mean, knitting with this yarn is so quick. So it should be done in plenty of time to get plenty of use out of it this winter. Although I should not jinx myself. I should knock on some wood. So that is one sweater project. Now I will tell you about my other sweater project. This is the project that I bought the yarn for, which is West Yorkshire Spinners, Air Valley DK. Bought this yarn while I was in England. Seemed appropriate to buy Yorkshire wool while in England. Bought the yarn. Didn't immediately cast on, but like a week later cast on. So this did not marinate in my stash in the least. And I actually bought the yarn with the cardigan in mind already, which is pretty good. So that's enough about that. Let me show you. Let me show you the cardigan. This is the Deco Cardigan, which is a design by Kate Davies. There's always a stage when you start knitting a sweater, it looks great. you know, sort of that first skein of yarn. There's no ends. Things are kind of in a nice shape. And then you get to the point where you divide for the fronts and the backs, or you put stitches on hold for the sleeves, and things just start looking hairy. So this looks a little hairy right now. I am knitting the first sleeve, and I think this is a trick that Nina of the Knitting Expat, talking about her a lot this episode, that she demonstrated on one of her podcasts, and I have obviously remembered it, and I can't take credit for this, is what I'm saying, but I've marked every time I've done a decrease so I can easily keep track of how many decreases I have done, instead of having to sort of look and count and squint. And I can easily tell you that I have done 5 sets of decreases, and I have 1 more to do before the rate of decrease changes. So it is, the Deco Cardigan is a really pretty sort of vintage-y, obviously Art Deco, with a slip stitch pattern. What is this fuzz? Go away, fuzz. Cat hair. Anyways, it has this really beautiful slip stitch that sort of goes on a slanty line. And the slip stitch pattern is also on the hem at the bottom. It will be on the cuffs of the sleeves, again, long sleeves, so I still have, I tried this on to make sure that the sleeve fit yesterday evening, and this is only to my elbow. Why are sleeves so long? You know, you hold out your arm and you don't think that your arm is that long, but I guess, you know, your arm span is usually as long as you are tall. I'm not a particularly tall person, but I'm also not, you know, super short either. So I guess it does make sense that those sleeves take a while. And this is also DK weight yarn knit to a relatively tight gauge. Totally forgot to make a note of what needles I have used, what sizes they are. And unfortunately, this DPN does not say. I think it's, and I just like sent it flying. I think it's 2.75 and 3 millimeter needles. And I do not actually know what US sizes those correspond to. I think it's a US 2 and a US 3. And the reason that I actually don't know that is because when I started this, I was in England, and I only had a US 6 with me because that was what I knit the shawl on. So, or the shawl with. And so the friend that I was staying with, who was also a knitter, was kind enough to give me some spare circular needles. So they're somewhere in a project bag, because obviously I'm on the sleeves, so I'm using DPNs at the moment, so that's what I have to show you. So that's my story with this cardigan. Oh, the slip stitch pattern is also on the back, which I think is really pretty. So this has been going really quickly. I've slowed down a little bit now that I'm on the sleeves, but I knit the body of the cardigan probably in 2 weeks, which for some of you is like glacial, but for me, that's pretty quick. And I want this finished garment, but I've also been enjoying the knitting, which I feel like is a like perfect combination. And this pattern has been, I've had my eye on this pattern for a while. I love sort of the vintage sensibility that it has about it. And I love, if you look up the pattern, you'll see that when you knit the button bands, I'm like gesturing at it and you can't see because it's off the camera. Clearly I'm out of practice. When you knit the button bands, it's not actually buttons. Kate Davies faced both button bands with ribbon on the wrong side, sewed on snaps, and then sewed on buttons on top of the snaps. And I am going to do that because I love the ribbon on the inside of the. I tend to wear cardigans open and not buttoned, so you know, sort of that like cute little ribbon detail I think will be really pretty. I don't have the ribbon yet. Haven't bought that, or the buttons. So that will be a fun shopping trip to get those things. I will say the one sort of, and I don't even know if it's a quibble because I actually tried it on and it fits relatively well. But the sleeves, I don't know, the way that she had you pick up stitches and knit the short rows for the sleeve cap seemed strange to me. But it's not a way to knit sleeves that I've ever done before. So I don't know if it was strange because it needed to be, or if it was not in fact strange at all, and it was just strange to me because I'd never done it this way before. So I'd be curious to know if any of you have knit this cardigan and have knit a lot of, should really like read up on different types of sleeves. Is this a short row sleeves, sleeve caps, shoulder, this part? There's some terminology here that I am missing. But anyways, it does fit relatively well. It just felt a little bit fiddly, and I didn't love it. So that's that. But again, I am really excited about this cardigan. And the red was actually not my first choice. My first choice was this same yarn, the Air Valley DK, in this beautiful kind of pea green. It's the kind of color that when I see it, I immediately think 1930s, and I'm not sure why. Maybe this green you'll sort, you know, if you maybe you also have this sort of association with this green. But it's kind of a pea green, which sounds ugly, but I loved it. But unfortunately, the yarn store had 2 different dye lots, and they only had 3 skeins of each dye lot, and I needed 4 skeins. So I decided to go with red, which is not my normal first choice. But both the lady at the yarn shop and my friend assured me that it was not a completely crazy decision. So, and it's a really pretty sort of like cherry red. It's definitely not a fire engine. I think it'll be like really wearable, and really distinctive, and I don't know, pretty in sort of the dark winter months. So yeah, and this is really great yarn. It was really, really affordable. I've knit socks with their range that is birds, their bird range of sock yarn, and really like those are some great hard wearing socks. And so I'm really excited to wear, to have a garment made out of some of their yarn. So that's, yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say about my Deco cardigan. I think we should talk about some acquisitions, because somehow I was worried. I was like, I'm going to forget how to do this. I'm going to forget how to talk for an hour. And here we are at 40 minutes, and I still have many things that I want to share. So most of my souvenirs from my trip were yarn and fabric. And I mailed my fabric to myself. It has not come yet. I'm not worried yet because I mailed it I visited a friend on the Isle of Man, which is one of the most beautiful places that I have ever been. And I don't know, if you ever have the opportunity to go, go. It's the island is tiny. It's 220 square miles. It's in the Irish Sea, about halfway between Great Britain and Ireland. It's about 30 miles from each. And if you stand on Snaefell, which is the highest point, I think it's just over 2,000 feet. On a clear day, which is not many days, you can see Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and England. But it's beautiful. We saw seals. We went to a castle. We went on some really lovely. It was really, really wonderful. So even though chronologically this was the last place that I went, and the last yarn that I bought, I will show you this very special purchase. it doesn't look like a whole lot. It doesn't even have ball bands. Oh man. But this is 2 skeins, 2 50-gram balls of Manx Lockton wool. So this is the sheep breed that is native to the Isle of Man, which I think there's been sort of a resurgence in farming Manx Lockton on the Isle in sort of recent years, recent decades. And I bought this at the, is it the Manx Woolen Mill, the Lockton Woolen Mill? Anyways, it's the woolen mill where they still weave the traditional Manx tartan pattern, and they had Manx Lockton wool for sale. And so obviously I had to buy some, and I'm not sure yet what it's going to be. It is definitely on the rustic side of the spectrum, but it is actually also softer than I expected it to be. So yeah, I'm not sure. I'm thinking maybe a hat. But this definitely needs to sort of marinate in my stash for a while. I want to just enjoy it as 2 skeins of sort of special, gosh, I'm just throwing everything, special like single breed wool yarn. And this brown, this sort of Morit brown, this is their color. You should look them up if you don't know what a Manx Lockton looks like. They often have 4 horns. Sometimes they even have 6, and they're curly. So it's kind of, if you aren't aware of what one looks like, which I was not until I sort of realized, I connected the fact that Manx Lockton is from the Isle of Man. I had no idea what they looked like. So that was that. And then while I was in France, while I was in Paris, I went to 2 really lovely yarn shops and bought 4 lovely skeins of yarn. So my first yarn pilgrimage was to La Bien-Aimée. Ooh, can we see this? And I went to their old location. They are currently in the process of moving to a new location. But their old location was super cute. It was this little yellow shop front. And I believe it is Aimée who dyes, I believe that's her name. These are hand-dyed in Paris, as the label says, right? Hand-dyed in Paris. Oh, it wants to focus on my face. Please focus on the sheep. No? Okay. Anyways, this was the first skein that I picked out. It basically jumped off the shelf into my hands because it is the most beautiful thing. Look at, oh, it's so pretty. This is going to hang out in my stash for forever. I just want to admire it exactly like this. It's her merino singles base, 400 yards in 100 grams, 100% merino. And the colorway is Le Littoral. So like seashore, and oh, it's so pretty. It also reminds me of Monet water lilies. And I was clearly feeling adventurous because this is the other skein that I bought. This is the gray is me. The crazy neons are less me. But I thought it was super fun, and I have, again, no idea what it will be when it grows up into a knitted garment, but it's really pretty, and the colorway is called Pop Grunge. Oh, and you can see this is different base, decided to purchase two different bases. So that was one purchase, or one trip. The other yarn shop that I went to was Little Weasel, which is in the Passage du Grand Surf, which is a 19th century covered shopping street. It's beautiful. So like just getting to the shop is wonderful. And it's very small. But I'm really glad I went because it was really cute. They organized all of their yarns, or they organize all of their yarns by color. which I think is really fun. And it was kind of a different sort of shopping experience. And it's not often that, you sort of, every yarn shop is different, but often the shopping experience is the same. You sort of expect to see all of their lace weight and all of their fingering weight and all of their DK weight, et cetera, et cetera. And so it was really fun to walk into like this rainbow shop. So I bought 2 skeins, again, bought 2 skeins of yarn, although 2 50-gram skeins this time. One is their own yarn, Little Wheeze. This is from the Betsy collection, and I'm not sure if that's a set of colorways or the weight of yarn, but the color is called Coral. It is coral in color. Ooh, that looks really orange. It's really not. It's coral. That's a little bit closer. This is more orange. This is a little bit more pink, but with orangey undertones to it. Yes, it's 100% superwash merino. And the other yarn that I bought, keeping with the theme of French yarns, is Fante's BB Merinos. And this is a French brand of yarn. It is made in France. And do I have anything else to say about this? Again, it's 100% superwash wool. I don't think there is a colorway name. Nope, don't think so. So anyways, I'm not sure if these two will be something. I don't think they can be something together. This is a more bluish gray, and this is, I just don't think they go together. But they will both become something special. So those are my new acquisitions, along with, like I said, I bought fabric because I've been sewing a fair amount, not tons and tons, but I sewed, recently I've sewn a dress and a top. I sewed myself a dress for my birthday, and then made a top that I finished just before I left on my trip. And like I said, I mailed the fabric to myself. This is why I started talking about the Isle of Man. I mailed it to myself from the Isle of Man, and I think post off the Isle of Man is notoriously slow. So I'm not worried that my things have not yet arrived. Although that having been said, I have not checked the mail today, so perhaps they did come. Before we wrap this all up, I have 2 books to talk to you about. One of the wonderful things about summer is that it means that I have time to read for fun again. And I am very conscious that that time is about to abruptly come to an end. I'm going to be doing a lot of reading in the coming months, but it is all going to be work related, which is fine, but I am slightly sad that my pleasure reading time is disappearing. So I'm going to tell you about 2 books. One of them is the best thing that I have read this summer, which was a bit of a shame because I read it. It was the first thing that I read this summer. And I knew as I was reading it that it was going to be the best thing that I read all summer. And the other book is what I am currently reading. So the best book that I read this summer, which I read way back in May, so you'll forgive me if my memory is a little bit rusty. I've been telling everybody about this book, is Saints for All Occasions by Courtney Sullivan. I have read, she's written, I think, 3 other books, The Engagements, Main, and Commencement. I have read Main as well, and I read it after I read Saints for All Occasions, and it was good, but Saints for All Occasions is really, like, it's something else. I just happened to pick this book up at a bookstore. I didn't know anything about it. I had never read anything by Courtney Sullivan, although I had realized after the fact, I took one creative writing class in college, and the writer and professor who taught that course, it was my class to fulfill my arts requirement, my senior spring, but the author, Jennifer Close, was the professor and author who taught the creative writing class, and she and Courtney Sullivan are very close friends. So that's kind of a funny personal connection that I sort of realized after the fact. Anyways, let me read you the inside cover of this book. Nora and Teresa Flynn are 21 and 17 when they leave their small village in Ireland and journey to America. Nora is the responsible sister. She's shy and serious and engaged to a man she isn't sure that she loves. Teresa is gregarious. She is thrilled by their new life in Boston and besotted with the fashionable dresses and dance halls on Dudley Street. But when Teresa ends up pregnant, Nora is forced to come up with a plan, a decision with repercussions they are both far too young to understand. 50 years later, Nora is the matriarch of a big Catholic family with 4 grown children. John, a successful if opportunistic political consultant. Bridget, quietly preparing to have a baby with her girlfriend. Brian, at loose ends after a failed baseball career. And Patrick, Nora's favorite, the beautiful boy who gives her no end of heartache. Estranged from her sister, Teresa is a cloistered nun, living in an abbey in rural Vermont, until, after decades of silence, a sudden death forces Nora and Teresa to confront the choices they made so long ago. A graceful, supremely moving novel from one of our most beloved writers, Saints for All Occasions explores the fascinating, funny, and sometimes achingly sad ways a secret at the heart of a family both breaks them and binds them together. And if you have listened to previous podcasts or know anything about me, you will know that when I realized one of the characters was a nun, that was why I bought the book, honestly. I am a graduate student studying medieval history, and I work on nuns. So I really wanted to read about a modern nun. And I sort of expected kind of an average sort of family drama novel. And I don't think this is an average family drama novel. I think that the way that Sullivan she weaves together the story that starts in the 1950s when these 2 sisters emigrate to the United States, and that story is much longer in time. And then following this sudden death, basically from the time the death happens until the funeral. So it's a much more condensed span of time in the present. And she kind of weaves these 2 stories and these two narratives, I guess, together in a way that I think is really clever. And I also think, going back to sort of the nun situation, she has some really smart things to say in this book. I think this book says some really powerful things about Catholicism and religion in the modern American sort of life, without being like, we're saying something significant about religion, like this novel is trying to say something. It feels much more understated than that. And I don't know, I just loved this book so much. I love sort of any novel that has really strong female characters at its heart. And this book has a couple. And I also love sort of explorations of relationships between women, and sort of women's friendships and sisterhoods, and chosen sisterhoods, nuns, and obviously sisters, biological sisters. And yeah, I've recommended this book to everyone who has asked me for a book recommendation recently, since I read it. I think I recommended it to at least 2 people before I even finished it. I was so confident that I was going to love it. And I think it's a book that I will reread. And like I said, I read Maine, which is about sort of 3 generations of women and their family's summer house in Maine. And it was really good, but it was not as good as this. So if you've read something else by Courtney Sullivan and it's left you on the fence, I recommend Saints for All Occasions anyways. And I will sort of leave you with this little blurb at the top. Richard Russo, I have no idea who he is, but he said, I hope to read another novel as strong and wise and beautiful and heartbreaking as Saints for All Occasions this year, but I'm not sure I will. And I have not yet, and I don't think I will either, because my time for reading for fun is almost over. So anyways, I cannot say enough good things about this book. The other thing that I am currently reading, I picked this up at the library 2 days ago on Wednesday. is The Shepherd's Life, Modern Dispatches from an Ancient Landscape by James Rebanks. And you may know him as, he has a Twitter account and an Instagram account at HurdyShepherd1, where he just sort of shares updates on being a shepherd. And the reason I picked this up, or the reason I sort of like found out about it, was partially because I was thinking about my Manxlochten, and you all might have seen Blacker Yarns, their new birthday yarn, which I'm really hoping I can get my hands on a skein or two, because seeing all of the knitters that Blacker sent samples to, and these knitters have been sharing on Instagram sort of their swatches and saying really nice things about the yarn, and it sounds amazing. But Blacker does such great work with sort of promoting rare breeds or single breed wool. So I was thinking about that, and sort of got lost in a daydream about, if academia doesn't work out, what could I do? And I could become a shepherd. I like living in the city a lot, but kind of being on the Isle of Man and then up with my parents in the UP, I was reminded how much I like sort of the outdoors and very small towns and, sort of big wide spaces where there aren't a lot of people. And it's a fantasy. It's an absolute total fantasy. But I did some Googling, and I'm like, there must be a shepherd somewhere has written a memoir about being a shepherd that I can read. And so I was led to The Shepherd's Life by James Rebanks. And he is a shepherd in the Lake District, which is actually a part of England that I say this like I've been to every other part of England. I have not. There's so many places in England and the United Kingdom that I would absolutely love to visit. And I would be hard pressed to tell you which I'd want to visit first. The Lake District is on the list. Cornwall is on the list. Obviously, the Highlands and all of the islands of Scotland are very high on the list for their sort of strong shepherding and wool and knitting tradition. Anyways, let me read to you. James Herriot's from modern times, and I grew up with. My mom read all of the James Herriot books, and we read the picture book of Christmas Day Kitten. Gosh, our family copy is so battered. I'm sure we still have it, though. Anyways, some people's lives are entirely their own creations. James Rebanks's isn't. The first son of a shepherd, who was the first son of a shepherd himself, he comes from a family that has lived and worked in the Lake District of northern England for generations further back than recorded history. It's a part of the world known mainly for its romantic descriptions by Wordsworth and the much-loved illustrated children's books of Beatrix Potter. But James's world is quite different. His way of life is ordered by the seasons and the work they demand. It hasn't changed for hundreds of years, sending the sheep to the fells in the summer and making the hay, the autumn fairs where the flocks are replenished, the grueling toil of winter when the sheep must be kept alive, and the lightheadedness that comes with spring as the lambs are born and the sheep get ready to return to the hills and valleys. This is the story of a deep-rooted attachment to place, modern dispatches from an ancient landscape describing a way of life that is little noticed. In evocative and lucid prose, James Rebanks takes us through a shepherd's ear, offering a unique account of rural life and a fundamental connection with the land that most of us have lost. It is a story of working lives, the people around him, his childhood, his parents and grandparents, of people who exist and endure, even as the culture of the Lake District and of farming changes around them. Many memoirs are of people working desperately hard to leave a place. And this is the story of someone trying desperately hard to stay. And I'm really, really enjoying it so far. I would sort of question the evocative and lucid prose. There's a couple of editorial things that would not have been choices that I would have made. Sort of information that's repeated. Some sort of weird. I was reading last night, and there was a set of parentheses, and then inside the set of parentheses was a set of brackets. And that's something I am guilty of having done in my own writing, and am very conscious about weeding out. but that's definitely not been enough to stop me. You can see how much I've read in sort of a couple of evenings, and that's really a minor. I'm really enjoying the story, and sort of it was immediately clear to me how important this landscape and this way of life are to James Rebanks. And I don't know, I was sort of, as I've been reading this, I've been thinking a lot about, there's a book that I don't want to talk about politics. This is not a political turn to this podcast at all. But since the most recent American election, there's a book that has kind of been everywhere called Hillbilly Elegy. And I haven't read it, and I'm not sure if I want to read it. It's sort of about rural America and sort of the people of rural America and a distinctive way of life. And this, I can't say it reminds me of that because I have not read that book. But it feels sort of a description of a completely different way of life. And I've also been thinking about how, I just got back from a 7-week trip where I was pretty rootless. My family has, the city that I was born in Pittsburgh. We moved when I was 2. I don't have sort of this, and I don't think many of us do. I think this is a very, a way of life that just doesn't exist as much in the ways that it used to. And I think it's really fascinating to read about. But I think that in what I've read so far, it's clear that as much as James Rebanks loves this way of life and he loves this land, and sort of the book opens with this. I'm hoping that you can read, but it defines heft as a noun, a verb, and an adjective. And basically it's the way that a sheep knows where it lives. And even if it's on sort of an open landscape and could, in theory, just go, wander off, it doesn't, because it knows where it's from. And I think that is how James Rebanks feels about the land. Sort of having your entire family and all of the people within this very small, very close-knit rural community. And I think as much as it's clear that he loves that, I think this book also doesn't sort of shy away from the difficulties or the changes. It's not, I don't want to say it's not idealizing this way of life. I think it's very honest about it, despite the fact that in spite of the fact that he loves it so much. I think it's very honest. So I'm really excited to finish this, and I hope that little sort of tangent about the things that I've been thinking about while I've been reading this was not too heavy for anybody's tastes, because this is, after all, a knitting podcast where I occasionally talk about things that I read. I have now been blathering on for an hour and 3.5 minutes. I can feel my voice starting to be tired, which maybe this was good practice. I am back in the classroom as a teaching assistant for ancient Egypt very soon. So that's going to be a super fun adventure. I'm genuinely very excited about it. But it will be very interesting because the things that I know about ancient Egypt are limited. So that's that. Like I said, I haven't decided yet if I'm going to just sort of upload this or if I'm going to wait until Sunday. I'm kind of leaning towards not doing show notes because I'm lazy. But there will be a post in our Ravelry group for this episode. And if you have any questions about, what was that yarn? What was that pattern? Who designed this? You cannot pronounce things, so please put it in writing for us. I will be happy to do that. I will sort of check the Ravelry group regularly to see to see if anybody has any questions. I hope you all have enjoyed this episode. It was, I was kind of nervous when I sat down because it's been so long since I've done this. But that was a really pleasant way to spend an hour. I will make absolutely no promises as to when I will next film an episode, because I don't know. Sort of the way my schedule is at the moment, honestly would rather knit than film an episode. If I have time for one thing or the other thing. But yeah, I hope you all are doing well. I have sort of missed doing this. I'm over on Instagram. I'm pretty active. But that's a totally different sort of venue from sitting down and talking to you guys for an hour. And I know that I always enjoy sitting down with a podcast and a cup of tea and my knitting and sort of catching up with people I might only know virtually, but who I still, really enjoy hearing from and seeing what everybody's knitting and all of that fun stuff. So that's to say that I hope if you are watching and have made it this far that you are doing well, that you are knitting lots of lovely things. If you are in the Northern Hemisphere, I hope you're looking forward to fall as much as I am. And if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, it's almost spring, and that is also something to be happy about. So that's obviously my other favorite season. Although I love winter too. I'm just indifferent towards summer because it's too hot, and I don't like hot weather. Although this summer, the parts of the summer that I was in Chicago were actually comparatively mild. So that was really nice. I did go and sat on a bench near the beach, one of the Lake Michigan beaches, on Sunday last weekend. So it was Labor Day weekend, and it was like 83 degrees, and I think all of Chicago was outside. That is one of the best things about this city, is that people know how to enjoy good weather, and it's like the whole city just moves outside when it's really nice. And I love that because, it's a beautiful city, and we have all these beaches on Lake Michigan, and, so I guess there are good things about summer. But I am really excited about fall. So, and this chilly weather still hasn't rained. Maybe the weather people were right after all. They usually are. Speaking of weather, if any of my viewers are in the path of Hurricane Irma or were in the path of Hurricane Harvey, I'm thinking of you, and I am planning later today to make a small donation to the American Red Cross in support of recovery efforts. So again, if that's something that you are also able to do, I encourage you to do so. But that's obviously your choice. I can't tell you what to do. But I thought, since I was talking about weather, and weather has obviously been in the news quite a lot lately in the United States because of hurricanes, that I would say something. So that's that. I've now talked for 5 minutes about nothing. So I think I will let you all go. And I will, I'll just film another podcast, and it will appear in your YouTube subscriptions when I get a chance. But I hope that you enjoyed this episode. And happy knitting. Have a good day, whatever it is that you're doing. I hope there's some knitting involved, because days with knitting are always better days. And I will talk to you all later. All right. Bye.